Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Anson and Paul's Big Movie Podcast. I'm Anson Chan.
And I'm Paul Morgan, and boy do I love the smell of podcasts in the morning.
Oh, hell yeah. And I also love the sound of Wagner in the afternoon.
Oh, who doesn't?
Today, if you haven't realized, we are reviewing Apocalypse Now.
And Platoon.
Yes. Paul, which of these two movies would you like to start with?
I have a feeling that we are going to have slightly less to say about Platoon. So I think
possible.
we should maybe start with that one.
Okay. Platoon is the 1986 movie directed and written by Oliver Stone, having a huge cast starring Tom Berenger, Keith David, Willem Dafoe, Forrest Whitaker, Francesco Quinn. We can just keep going down this IMDb list. Johnny Depp, and the main character is played by that one guy from Wolf of Wall Street. What's his name again?
Charlie Sheen.
That's the guy. I don't know why he doesn't have top billing credits on this IMDb.
Because he's a horrible actor, and no one would click an IMDb page that featured him on it. That's my opinion.
What's this vitriol, man?
I don't know. Have you seen a well-known TV quote-unquote comedy called 2.5 Men?
I really did not care for that show.
Yeah, he's the star of that show, and he is god-awful. And that god-awfulness translates to just about every movie he's ever been in, save for the comedy films, which he obviously nailed.
What about Wall Street? I liked him in Wall Street.
Wall Street, yeah. Wall Street's good.
Yeah, that's basically kind of like the only movie I know him of, and I was like, he was really good in Wall Streat.
Yeah. Wall Street is a good one.
Okay, I guess. Wow, I didn't know that it ran so deep that IMDb's got to scrub him. Shit.
Oh, man. Well, I that was just a tasteless joke, but I mean, you know.
There could be truth, a little moniker of truth in there.
Yeah, there could be, definitely. So, go on. You were talking about Platoon for us here.
Charlie Sheen is a fresh recruit in the Marines, a college dropout, discovers kind of the horrors of war and the politics that are involved in fighting this conflict while serving under Willem Dafoe as Sergeant Elias.
Yeah, he keeps calling him Elias.
Yeah, and Tom Berenger as Sergeant Barnes, Scar-faced Barnes. So, pretty cool stuff. In the course of the movie, we see him going from like a fresh green recruit to kind of like a battle-hardened veteran, changing the way he kind of thinks, how he fights, how he feels.
Yep.
And the escalation of the conflict as well as the degradation of himself, if you will.
Yes.
And that's my synopsis.
Yep. My synopsis would be, let's hire an actor who can't emote, put him as the lead in the movie, and then give him a bunch of really bad voiceover to make up for the fact that he has no facial expressions, despite the voiceover being unnecessarily verbose and obvious to the themes of the plot.
Wow.
That would be my summary of the movie Platoon.
Let's talk about Charlie Sheen's performance really quick, since we're on this topic.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a problem with his acting. I will agree with you, though, that he doesn't really change his face or expression much in the movie.
Yeah,
but
obviously
really
what I said was
me.
like a very harsh hyperbole, but at the same time, he's kind of a rock.
I'd agree to that.
He kind of has this one expression and then anger, and then that's it. And, I thought this was, for the record, I thought this was a really interesting movie, but because of that, his acting is always something I've been critical of, I guess.
Can you think of a better actor for that role? Just out of curiosity.
Of the time?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one, because this came out like mid-'80s, right?
86, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Did you ever see the first Rambo movie?
I think so, yeah.
I think maybe like a mid-'80s Stallone would have done a good job. He's a surprisingly good actor at times if given good material to work with. And I think the material they had to work with in this movie was pretty fantastic. I loved the dialogue. I loved the plot.
Yeah.
I love the characters. So I feel like they had great material to work with. It's just like Kevin Dillon is a fucking horrible actor, in my opinion, and Charlie Sheen, he's kind of a one-note actor.
Do you think that it would have been a little bit hard for Stallone to pull off the I'm a college dropout? Because he seems more of like the I would be a grunt kind of guy.
He does seem like that. You're right. So yeah, that's just probably a stretch. I'm trying to think of like, I guess younger actors then who would have done a good job.
Yeah, my movie knowledge is not so good.
Yeah, my movie knowledge is not great of that like time
particular
period.
era. Yeah.
But
was Clint Eastwood doing good stuff at this time?
I'm not
would
sure
he
what
be
he
too cowboy?
was. I feel like he was kind of lost in the 80s, having kind of peaked in the late 70s. But maybe like
he was too old for the role then.
Yeah.
He could have brought a good, interesting war stare.
Could have been better. That's the thing that sucks, is that I can't think of any better examples.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. I see what you mean by there being lost potential here, because that performance had a lot to deliver that might not have been delivered upon by Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because, like, the other actors in the movie are so strong at times.
Oh, God, yeah.
That it's like, why couldn't every actor in this movie be that strong?
You know what I must say? I like John McGinley. Yeah.
Oh,
he was good in this role, and to only know him from, like, Scrubs and, like, just vaguely a couple of other of his, like, works, just not actually seen him in it, but are aware.
Yeah.
It was cool to see him, like, pre-Scrubs doing good. I liked it.
Yeah.
He was a serious actor at the time. What'd you think of his performance?
Played a very convincing coward.
Yeah, a suck-up, an asshole, basically.
Yeah.
But I liked it.
No, yeah, I liked him a lot as well.
To get us kind of, I guess, back on course, Paul, what did you like about Platoon?
So in the first half of the movie, I would say until about like the 50 to 55 minute mark, they did a really good job of showing kind of like the aimlessness and monotony of war. And that's one of the few things that I think the voiceover actually genuinely contributed to, was kind of like the, oh, we're just out here and we're stuck for however many days at this place we don't want to be, and, you know, we all just got to kind of deal with it, and none of us are really ready to deal with it. And then once the other guy, who's not Charlie Sheen, falls asleep on his watch, and they go and they, like, massacre that whole village afterwards.
Yeah, Junior.
Then I think the movie gains a real sense of, like, being, hey, listen, this war is not going to be pretty at all. And from there, that feeling progresses. I felt one thing about these two movies is that I really looked at Platoon as a movie through the lens of how it makes me feel. And I really looked at Apocalypse Now as a movie in terms of, like, craft and artisticness.
Totally understandable.
Yeah, I feel like Platoon had such an amazing script and such a, I don't want to say diverse, but like diverse in terms of like people who would eventually go on to be stars type of cast, that in a way Platoon kind of felt like Oscar bait. Because it had all this really well-written dialogue. It had actors perform that dialogue super well. Tom Berenger's character was, I loved to hate him. But I also saw at times, at very interesting kind of very few moments, where he was coming from.
Yeah, he was sympathetic when he enters the village and shoots that lady, because he just saw his men killed. He saw them kind of like butcher the team that was supposed to be helping him take out the traps, the engineering squad.
It reminded me a lot of that scene
sounded
in Saving Private Ryan, where the Americans finish storming the beach, and they see these two guys with their hands up, and the guys aren't even speaking German, they're speaking some other language, and they like just assume they're Nazis and just gun them down because they're so furious about what just happened. Like, as horrific as that is, I understand that. Like, if I just saw all my best friends die,
they come out speaking some weird language, just shoot them.
Yeah, it's like
they came out of the bunker.
And we discussed this last podcast when we were talking about Good Morning Vietnam and what's it called, Full Metal Jacket and stuff.
Yes.
Is like the nature of guerrilla warfare is that you a lot of times are not going to know who the enemy combatants are.
Yep.
And that makes it really tough to act in accordance with your personal morals because you'd rather be alive than dead, simply.
Mm-hmm. And this is where the Apocalypse Now comparison is going to be really interesting because Marlon Brando's character had a lot of interesting things to say about that type of warfare and how you would need to win that war.
Yeah, by like killing compared everyone to what we saw, and stuff
right,
like that.
And how we saw Tom Berenger's character, Sergeant Barnes. You got to be ruthless in this type of fight. And I was like, however,
like if the machine breaks down, then we break down.
Right, and that was highly frowned upon. The
machine wants us to kill
movie.
The innocent people, unfortunately.
Yeah, and yet at the same time, Apocalypse Now has the message of Marlon Brando saying, "Oh, that would have been totally justified. You got to gun down a civilian once in a while. That's the nature of this war." So those two are going to be philosophically very interesting to compare because this kind of shows Sergeant Barnes is a huge asshole, and oh my god, look at the horrible things he does. Where it is very much justified in Apocalypse Now.
Well, no, I think Apocalypse Now just shows that it happens.
Right.
Because, like, Kurt's the one that Martin Sheen is meant to kill in Apocalypse Now. He is the one that, quote-unquote, understands that mentality and thus hates it. And then the grunts are the guys who are like, yo, one little thing happened to our platoon. We got to kill all of them. It doesn't necessarily make a moral judgment in favor of that, I would say.
I think where those two diverge is Kurtz. He sees it as a necessity and doesn't do it with the moral passion. Do you recall in Lawrence of Arabia when he says Prince Faisal takes prisoners as a courtesy, whereas Lawrence does it as a moral obligation? It's up to you to decide which one you think is better.
Yeah.
And so when you get that moral fervor behind it, you get led into that massacring, right?
Yeah.
For very little reason other than you were stirred up. But what Kurtz does is he's not afraid of killing civilians and women and children if it is deemed necessary, right?
Yeah, if it's necessary to meet his ends.
Correct. So when they were just getting like hit constantly, or they knew where his squad was operating, they had to kill that lady, the kid, and the guy or whatever in the village, and all of a sudden all the things went away.
Yeah.
The South Vietnamese like official, and then it's like that's exactly what he needed to do to not get killed from his own side.
Yeah.
Interestingly.
Yeah, just kind of a generalized horrors of war type scenario.
So those two echo there interestingly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess drawing from this movie, this definitely has a moral message of this is bad what they're doing. It's terrible of the havoc the Americans wreak upon the Vietnamese natives. Which is true, and I still believe that. But at the same time, the other message of Apocalypse Now again was like, you have to think of the big picture here. And this is actually how wars are won. I was like, yeah.
You really think that Francis Ford Coppola thinks that?
What? That's how wars need to be won. No, I think that objectively, not as what Francis Ford Coppola might be trying to portray, but I think objectively, as history has taught us, the old style of conquest was like, look, we're either going to annex you or we're going to like massacre your people instead of our people on your lands because we can't have these diverging people oftentimes. You know what I mean? Trying to hold together a state of so many broken people.
Maybe even farther back than
way
that.
Before that. Yeah, it's only in modern times or recent times where you've seen kind of like the as sad and as objectively terrible as it is from a human standpoint. That's how a lot of the territory today's countries have. America is a prime example of the slaughter of the Native Americans. Europe, I'm sure, look at them, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, the European countries right now are just the ones that survived all of the slaughter.
Yeah, look at the fucking, the coast, Bosnia, and all those places. Croatia, the turmoil is involved in that, Albania. That shit was not uncommon. It's just with modern sensibilities, it seems like it's such a disgusting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, when applied to the Vietnam War, you really see this has been a topic of conversation between me and my friends a lot, actually, where we look at the Vietnam War. I don't remember why, but and talk about like the morality and like the general warfare style. So when I hear Kurtz in Apocalypse Now talk about what you need to do to win, I nod my head, but as a human being, I shake my head, right?
Yeah, well, and I think that's the reason why the brass wants him killed, is because he's like, the way to win this war is to be as brutal as we possibly can. And they want it to appear, the brass wants it to appear as if, oh, we're just helping these people get through an invasion by a remarkably similar people.
Mm-hmm. So recall when Sergeant Barnes kills the villager in this movie, right? After he sees his, the engineering team get killed and slaughtered. When he says, like, who the fuck cares about one civilian? Like, they're trying to make us fight a war with one arm tied behind our back. These fucking bureaucrats, right?
Yeah.
These fucking soft hearts. That's the exact same thing that Martin Sheen says in Apocalypse Now. It's like, we just machine gunned all these people in half, and yet we want to turn back and bring, like, as a sign of mercy and goodwill, back to get her checked out. It's like, that is so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Those two would get along famously.
Yeah.
But in that context, that is absolutely right. In this context, it is seen as just like, wow, that is just horrible what he's done. And it's so interesting to see the portrayal so different with the exact same message and killing.
But I also think you have to kind of consider what kind of character Martin Sheen is in order to properly consider the implications of that statement coming from him. If you remember his opening monologue, he's talking about how, like, the jungle the first time broke him down badly enough that he felt like ordinary life was boring. He also talks about how his want for that violence ruined his life and his marriage back home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, when it's coming from him, it's obviously coming from a man who's gone through what Barnes has gone through and then was broken by it, if that makes sense.
You see Barnes in a similar way, but he's more villainized for it.
Well, that's because Barnes, I don't think, has reached the breaking point yet. I think Martin Sheen's character is far past his breaking point, and that's why he's kind of this shell of a man. And Barnes still believes in what he's doing as like a matter of ideology rather than a matter of kind of nihilism, the way Martin Sheen is.
I like drawing these two comparisons because I think they're very much the same character, where Sergeant Barnes actually carries the scars on him at all times, on his face, and he's been shot 7 times and he's still alive, right?
Yeah.
So he walks with these scars, and this obviously affected him. Whereas Martin Sheen's character, the scars are very much internal, and you see how they manifest.
Yeah.
As you say, in his marriage, in his thinking overall, like how he's kind of come to his moral direction.
Surely.
Right? But they are two very similar characters.
They are very similar, but I don't know that, even though Martin Sheen's the protagonist, I wouldn't say he's necessarily a good or bad guy.
He's a bit of an anti-hero.
Yeah, exactly. I would definitely agree with that statement.
I don't know. I just think it's really cool to compare the two because I see Sergeant Barnes could be a shadow of Martin Sheen's character, or maybe even a before and after picture. For instance, if the movie was about Tom Berenger or Sergeant Barnes as the main character, what Martin Sheen does in Apocalypse Now would fit right in.
Yeah.
It would all seem like vaguely justified and horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I just think is so interesting when we watch these two side by side and get the comparison.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I guess other than that, aside from what I already
totally
mentioned,
ruined your train of thought.
I really like the dialogue, and unfortunately I don't have a lot of great examples of the dialogue in Platoon, but I think for the most part, with the exception of a few kind of like very what seemed to be cliches, the dialogue seemed very well written, And one of my favorite scenes with regard to the dialogue was the scene where Tom Berenger comes in and all those guys are talking about how big of a shithead he is. And he goes...
And how they should frag him, kill him, basically.
Yeah, and he goes, you guys smoke this shit to escape reality? I don't need to escape reality. And yet he's fucking
getting
drunk.
Yeah, just
I just thought that was a really great scene because it's like, obviously you're not okay right now. And that's another kind of parallel between him and Martin Sheen's character in Apocalypse Now, is that like he's at the beginning of the movie, Martin Sheen's character is drinking himself into a stupor because that's the only way he knows how to occupy his time, because that's the thing they say about alcoholics is a lot of people just want to pass the time. They want the time to be over. Mm-hmm. So, I think that was another interesting parallel between them. Mm-hmm. I liked some of the tracking shots across the ocean of them running with their guns in the scene before the big ambush where Willem Dafoe tells them how to outflank the enemy. Those tracking shots I thought were really, really beautiful. Mm. The shots of the jungle itself I thought were really, really beautiful and interesting because you just get a kind of sense of like all this is trees that are not convenient to be around and the occasional clearing, and that's it. I like that a lot.
Dense vegetation.
Yeah, and the musical score I thought was fun too.
Yeah.
What worked especially for you in Platoon?
I'm going to parrot a lot of what you just said. I really enjoyed the combat in the jungle. You really got the sense of claustrophobia. The noise of the jungle adds to the anxiety, if you will, that you get with Martin Sheen, or just in general, just being in VC territory. Yeah. Or going up against the VC in general. The combat itself was a little bit funky at times. Where,
I agree.
The tracer rounds were obviously Roman candle shots, basically. Yeah. But what they get across with it is still very good. I feel like the combat portrayal was probably the best portrayal I've seen so far in a Vietnam War movie. So to give you context, that includes Apocalypse Now, Full Metal Jacket, Good Morning Vietnam, and Deer Hunter. So I think that's a credit to it.
Sure.
The characters' delivery and dialogue were great. They all felt very real. I don't think any of them were outstandingly cartoony, even though you might want to say like Willem Dafoe or Tom Berenger, because of the way they owned their character and how they kind of blended into their unit.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't call any of the characters cartoony. And that's possibly because there's so little battle and so much real-world complaining type behavior from all of them.
And it never becomes overwhelming or like, oh god, like this is just gone on too long.
And it's never too revealing either.
Yeah, it does a really good job of not bearing down on you too much with these characters. They spend a lot of time making you get to know. And at the same time, you feel like a lot of these people are really fleshed out.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge credit to the character development and writing.
Yeah.
So I believe I told you once that like this might be my favorite Vietnam War movie now. It's close because I like what Good Morning Vietnam has to do. It makes you care about the characters and the way the Vietnamese are portrayed as like, it shows the human side, right? On both sides. Very much so. This one, you get the human side too from the American side, but it does such a really good job of like being real. Very distinct characters. So many. Like that's just, I can't imagine how hard that was to juggle.
Yeah.
I think this that was
one
really
seems
good.
Like one that was on the in the writing room for quite a long time.
Yeah. I really liked Willem Dafoe's acting and character in this. I think he stole a lot of his scenes. I only know a lot of his like later work, what we've seen today, and so seeing him in this movie just totally own that role and do very fucking good in it was really nice to see too. I don't think anyone in this movie had a really notably bad performance. If you don't want to count Charlie Sheen, who you seem to hate.
I didn't like Charlie Sheen, and I also didn't. Just in general, this is not. I mean, you know me. I really don't like insulting people or saying my true opinion if it's a negative opinion. But I really think Kevin Dillon is one of the worst actors that consistently gets work in Hollywood, and that is entirely with the knowledge that Matt Dillon is one of the better actors working in Hollywood today. So
yeah, Kevin Dillon. Now that you mention it, he was the only one that was like really close to walking that razor's edge of like being like, okay, you're a Fury level actor. You kind of suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know exactly what they were going for with this character, but he was pretty overbearing.
Yeah, it was another one of those ones where it's like your lines for your character were great and revealing about your character and everything, but
you went a little too far.
Yeah, it was like not that interesting when you said them. So
yeah, you were just like a super bad guy.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even say that like Sergeant Barnes was that bad of a guy. Fucking Kevin Dillon, who played Bunny, he was just like a total psychotic asshole. Even though they try to give him moments of humanity, is lost with his just purely crazy portrayal, which might not be a bad thing. Because if you want to talk about Full Metal Jacket and how you like appreciate the whole, they come from different walks of life, they're very distinct personalities, then Bunny fits in that camp. But again, that's why I didn't like that movie, or the second half, because there were a lot of Bunny characters.
Sure.
And this movie is able to be overshadowed by everyone else's performance, so thank God for that.
Yeah, definitely. The performances made this movie by a long shot.
I also really like the score, as you said. They only really play one song throughout.
Yeah, it's kind of just the variations on a theme type thing.
Yeah, the orchestration of the sad strings, the kind of like, you get the real sense of depression from the song as the monologues cue. But I like it. It really sets up the atmosphere well. I didn't think the monologues were overly hokey. I think they actually lent themselves well to the movie.
Which, if you've seen some of Oliver Stone's other movies that he's written, that is not always the case. So, kind of...
Yeah, I was going to say, I could see how that could be a complaint for somebody. And for me, it kind of got a little close to being, like, too preachy. But it actually didn't feel that way for me.
Okay.
But I was conscious of about to feel that way.
Yeah.
Boo, they're trying too hard. But I didn't get that. I respect that and appreciate that.
That's good.
Yeah. I really like the grittiness, the dirtiness that they are able to portray in kind of like the combat and the interpersonal relationships between the people.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
The ending monologue where Charlie Sheen's like, we weren't out there fighting Charlie. We're out there fighting ourselves.
That was too cheesy for me, unfortunately.
When I think back on it, because I've watched it now like twice.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I kind of dig it because there's a lot of class and racial debate in this movie, which is perfect for its time. Yeah. It's taking place in the Vietnam War. And when you see they're killing each other, they're putting down each other. There's like different camps on, like, not only is Junior in like the Barnes camp, but he's also a Black Panther kind of like freedom, not, I wouldn't call him a freedom fighter, but he's of that same mindset of like, you know, Black power, and amidst these like crazy white redneck.
That was a part that kind of blew my mind, because I didn't expect them to play that card in this, but it is really a factor that people don't get to talk about a lot. So that was very interesting. Yeah. And it had a really interesting place in that he was in the other camp, but he was still like brothers with the black guys, but they have like so many of their own like walk of life issues that when you think about it holistically, even John C. McGinley was like, there's no cowards out here. You just have to do your time and get out. So his character, while being like a suck up and a pussy, is not reprimandable. It's not reprehensible in this sense, because he's like, I got a really bad feeling about this one, man. I never asked you for nothing, but I got my honeymoon. You know, I got a life I want to go back to. Yeah, and he's not a bad character. He is genuinely very affected by the horrible things he sees Bunny do and Sergeant Barnes do. Yeah, but he's still a team player to a fault. They bring so much depth to these characters. Yeah. So in his last speech, when he says, we were fighting ourselves, it didn't feel too bad to me, because this movie, while the Vietnam conflict is the backdrop, it is so good in elevating the actual social issues of each and every one of these people, as well as the personal issues, the type of people they are, and how they interact. I just love that, because Charlie Sheen's whole fucking thing was like,
I came because my grandfather was in the army. My father's in the army, but I'm a college boy. And he's in the very beginning, he's talking about the class structure.
Yeah.
How these people have no life to go back to, but they're the bravest and they just can take it. And that's what makes them so strong. At the same, when they realize he's a college guy, like, you're a fucking idiot, man. Why would you ever walk from that?
Yeah.
And you see, like, I love it, man. You see just so much societal commentary in such a brief mention, but it still carries so much weight with it. With all this Vietnam War shit going on in the background. Mwah. Beautiful. Love it. So
interesting.
it sits better with me the more I sit with it.
Sure.
The monologues and the message overall.
Yeah.
But those are the outstanding things for me. Was there anything that you didn't really like in this movie?
I mean, I know this is nitpicky, but like, you gotta explain your character with letters to your grandma. Come on. Like, seriously, that could not have been a more of a turnoff for me. It's like...
Yeah, it's pretty tropey.
Yeah, it's like the characters in this movie and the plot based around how those characters are made to feel about the war and about their situation, that would have been enough. It's kind of like... I feel like Platoon would benefit from the Blade Runner treatment where... they just take out all the voiceover, re-release it in that direction, and it's a million times better movie.
I was thinking about that on my second watch, and I have to disagree. I was wondering what these scenes would look like without the monologue, but it develops Charlie Sheen's character more with having them. Yeah, the grandma part's corny. I 100% agree with you there. But by the end, when it's brought up, like, you're not writing anybody, what's up? He's also having that I can't reintegrate with society moment.
Yeah.
And so that still had weight. While the vehicle itself, writing to grandma, was corny, I didn't take issue with it by the end. If that makes sense. But I can totally 100% understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just, I just happen to disagree.
Yeah.
I happened to not like Willem Dafoe's death. But not because
Sonny
I
Corleone
thought it was
style.
a bad scene to have in the movie.
Which part? When he gets gunned down by Barnes or gunned down by the VC?
When he got gunned down by the VC. When he got gunned down by the VC, it was this great emotional moment where he keeps trying to get back up and use all of his strength, and you think to yourself, oh man, if he could just get on one of those helicopters, he could tell everyone what Barnes did and this whole debacle would be over. But then there's that moment where he throws his hands up in the air, kind of like Nicolas.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like Nicolas Cage waving those flares on the edge of Alcatraz on the Rock. Have you seen that movie?
I did a long time ago, I think.
It's kind of like that. Where
I don't
it's
remember
like,
this.
Yeah, it looks fucking amazing, sure. But god damned if that wasn't cheesy to see.
I agree with you, and I could have seen that going differently. My spin would have been like, he is running out there, but you see movement in the trees. You see the panic on Barnes' face. You get more of like the sense of guilt when Charlie Sheen glances at him, glances back.
Yeah.
You see a couple VC or whatever pop out of the trees at the wounded Defoe, who should not have been running at full speed, who should have been like bleeding and like holding, or like, you know, he's obviously wounded.
He should have been doubled over in pain and running in a zigzag pattern.
You see the fear in his eyes, he goes down, and then that would have had to wait. And you see that maybe the relief on Barnes or the fear in Barnes when Charlie Sheen sees him again.
Yeah.
And then that you said, I saw it in his eyes, man. That would have made more sense than the Sonny Corleone style death.
Yeah. So,
but that's, I don't know. Are we being Monday morning quarterbacks? Kind of like that's what I would have liked to see.
Yeah, it's what I would have liked to see as well. And then the only other thing I would say, and this unfortunately is, in my opinion, a consistent part of Oliver Stone movies, is the violence in a lot of the scenes. Not all of them, but in a lot of them, was too hectic. It was cut too quickly because they didn't think up their set pieces well enough to make the violence coherent. There's that one Every Frame of Painting episode about Jackie Chan's fights in his Chinese movies and why they're so much better than his American movies. And it talks about how his Chinese movies use a clarity of frame to show you exactly what's going on because something is going on that you want to see all of.
I understand.
The violence in a lot of this was like show a guy with a gun and then just cut to the explosion. There's that effect in film where it's like you see something and it cuts to another thing and you automatically assume the two cuts are related. So I understand that that's a legitimate film technique, but it's like, show me a shot in which a guy fires a rocket-propelled grenade, you see the grenade leave the launcher, hit its target, explode, and then cut into someone dying from it or something. You know, like...
In that instance, I agree.
Yeah. In that way, I thought the violence was a little bit weak. But in my defense, I think in that regard, Oliver Stone might be one of the more overrated kind of thriller directors, because Natural Born Killers has shades of that. Any Given Sunday has shades of that. You know, other movies he's done that kind of have violent parts aren't really ever clear about, you know, what exact violence is happening. So, something to think about, I guess.
I think holistically, goddamn, is that an impossibility? I appreciated a lot of the hectic cutting because of it really does kind of portray the frantic nature of those firefights.
Yeah.
But I do also agree with that instance, like I said, of the rocket propelled grenade hitting a bunker. That would have been nice, but to ask for that for like a lot of the firefighting would have maybe been too much.
It would have been too much, but I think an example of a movie that did it well and without confusing the audience too much is something like Saving Private Ryan, where, you know, you see a machine gun nest and the person whose head they're blowing off in the same frame type of thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's kind of a nitpick because violence in war movies is violence in war movies, and it's more about the reaction and the aftermath of that violence than it is about the violence itself.
You brought up a good point, though. That was a really good example. The Normandy or the machine gun nested in Spielberg's film.
Yeah. So that was one thing. And then other than that, there's not really a lot I disliked about this movie. Although I didn't forget to mention one thing I liked, which was when John C. McGinley gets out of the last firefight that they're in, and the commanding officer comes up to him and he goes, "You all right?" And he nods, and then the commanding officer says, "Good, because you're going to second platoon." And John C. McGinley's face is just like, oh, fuck. Like, I cannot take this right now. Is there anything in this movie that didn't work for you?
Yeah, Willem Dafoe's death also rubbed me the wrong way. I thought that was like the only thing that was really out of place.
Yeah. To be fair, it was made much better by the fact that I now know where Ben Stiller's death in Tropic Thunder comes from.
Have
you seen Tropic Thunder?
Yeah.
You know that opening scene where they're shooting Ben Stiller from behind and he's going like, and his raising his arms?
Yeah.
I never realized that was from Platoon because I just hadn't seen Platoon. And now that I noticed that, I was like, oh man, that's fucking
genius.
funny. Yeah.
Well, now I appreciate that way more too.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So it's definitely like it's an overbearing scene, but it gives you a bit of respect for another great movie.
Damn, there's really not too much I didn't like about this movie, though. I'm thinking back real hard, and I like this length. I think the pacing was good. Good story, good characters, good dialogue, good acting, good music. Scene specific. Can't really pick out too much. Oh! I remember now. I fucking hate the sound of kids crying.
Oh, God.
I fucking hate the sound of kids fake crying. Watching that little girl fake cry when her mom got shot, I was like, oh, this is so annoying.
Oh, yeah.
The first time watching it, I was like, please, someone do something about this, because if this has to go on for like a couple more minutes, I will be so pissed off.
Yeah.
And that is not the intended effect. You're supposed to be feeling sympathy, but that only made me angry.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, this fucking kid.
Yeah.
That might be the only thing.
Fair enough. Well, I guess in that spirit, would you recommend this movie to a fellow viewer?
Hell yeah, I would. I would recommend this to any person who likes war movies or wants to see a good Vietnam War movie. Warning, it's a little bit graphic, but
it's both emotionally and like gorily graphic.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're down to watch Good Morning Vietnam, you might be down to watch this.
Yeah,
because they both tackle topics that are like sort of similar,
sure.
and they both kind of do show some like very disturbing imagery or tackle some disturbing themes.
Sure.
But this one might leave you with a little bit more holy shit, I can't believe I just saw that.
Yeah.
Kind of feeling.
Sure.
But anyway, Paul, how about you?
I would recommend this movie, definitely. It's probably top 2 Oliver Stone movies, the other one being Wall Street.
Hell yeah.
I don't really like Oliver Stone, especially because he wrote Scarface, which I consider to be one of the worst blockbusters of all time. So I'm not an Oliver Stone fan. I almost walked out of Savages. I just don't enjoy his movies for the most part, and this one I thought was really well done for the most part. Also, I have a quick story about this movie. So there's this part in the movie, I don't remember what point it is, where a character says the F word and the A word, fuck and ass, in the same sentence, and my mom was in the room, and she goes, "Oh, this movie has way too much cursing for me." And then it cuts over to Willem Dafoe alone in the forest, and she goes, and it's quiet for a little while, and she goes, "Oh, you don't have to pause it until I leave. I just don't like swear words." And I was like, "Oh no, it's just a really quiet part of the movie, Mom." And she was like, "Oh, God damn it." So I thought that was funny. So now we move on to Apocalypse Now. And before we start, yes, I think this is going to be important to our discussion on some level, some small level.
Yes.
It is based on a very famous short story called Heart of Darkness.
It's not short, dude. It's like 200 pages.
No, it's not 200 pages. It's like 111 pages tops.
Hold on. 111 pages?
Yes.
It's not that short.
It's a short story by Joseph Conrad that is very famous for its portrayal of British colonization in Africa. And it basically applies the basic plot of that story to the Vietnam War. And I don't know why you didn't read this in high school, because it was required reading in my class.
Nah, I wasn't an AP, dude.
I wasn't an AP
you were
either,
an AP
man.
Probs. Oh. I didn't. Yeah, I don't know who I had. What year was it?
It was my senior year with Mr. Berg. It was the short story was the class, I think.
Oh, I didn't take the short story. Oh, I took Gothic Lit.
Oh, okay.
That's why.
I wanted to take that, but
so
there were
read
not enough slots open.
Oh, such a good class. You would have loved it.
This was taught by Miss Casey, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to
read some Dracula.
Shout out to Shannon Casey.
Hell yeah. You're a great teacher. I really enjoyed that class, and that kind of sparked an interest in Gothic literature for me.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Short story form in general. So thank you, Miss Casey. Really, really appreciate the class.
So yeah, before we go on, it is based on that short story by Joseph Conrad with a very similar plot and themes.
188 pages. It's not a short story.
I feel like the one I had was not even close to being 188
Short story
pages.
For me is like 20 pages.
Okay, so you're talking like
Isaac Asimov.
The late Asimov. Yeah, I was going to say The Last Question, The Last Answer, stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay.
That kind of stuff.
Fair enough.
This is a full book.
So it's a regular book then, let's say. Very dense, though, in symbolism and racism and race theory of the turn of the century. So, Anson, I will go ahead and explain the plot of this real quick since you did the last one. Basically, this movie centers on... The last movie centered on Charlie Sheen. This one centers on Martin Sheen, who plays a character named Captain Benjamin Willard, who we can refer to as Captain Ben, as Jamin, as Willard, as Captain Willard, however we want. He is sent on a secret mission by the U.S. government to go assassinate a colonel, Colonel Kurtz, which is the same name as the short story, who has gone rogue and gotten a group of Cambodian natives to sort of worship him and follow his every order.
And these are like natives, not
like people who don't know what a wheel is yet, pretty much.
Yeah, they're like hella tribal natives.
Yeah. It starts out and Martin Sheen is kind of wasting time in Saigon. He gets called to do his mission, and then it's all of the ups and downs of him getting to this guy. And then I would say probably the last 40 minutes of the movie is his interactions with him and his eventual dispatching of the man. The last 45 of which includes a real-life brutal slaughter of a field cow, which is really very cool to see. So, Anson,
yeah,
I know you have mentioned to me via text message, you've mentioned to me on this podcast already that you don't like this movie as a general rule, but having said that, is there anything that worked for you in this movie?
Oh, God, yeah. There's a lot of really cool things I like in this movie. My favorite scene is when they go to the French plantation and they're talking to the French dudes about, like, we're still here, like, on this plantation because we made this. We brought the rubber seeds trees from Brazil, taught the Vietnamese how to cultivate it, owned this land. We made something out of nothing. I really liked that whole scene where he's like, if we, the French, can't keep this, like, we keep losing, but if we can't keep this with, like, all of the reason why we should want this, what the fuck are you guys thinking trying to win this war? Like, there's no way. Learn from us, because, like, this I love that. That was such an interesting scene that I don't think I ever would have seen elsewhere. I thought that was a really interesting perspective. I thought the addition of, like, the actually French speaking and French actors was really cool.
Yeah.
It added more mystique to the movie, more of an exotic feel. It's already very exotic locale. I love that scene. I like that scene with the French lady, who's like, there are two sides. There's the lover and the fighter. Right now, you're not the fighter. There's a man who loves and a man who kills, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that. It's so good. That expounds upon that whole quote-unquote Jungian thing from Full Metal Jacket far better than what Full Metal Jacket did.
Well, I think Platoon also touched on the Jungian thing as well, because
at
the beginning, Charlie Sheen is a wussy who couldn't hurt a fly, but he's gung-ho, and then by the end, he has killed, how many dozens of people and is okay with it.
And you also see the duality of Willem Dafoe's character quite stark, where he's, like, actually a very cool, caring guy with a high moral standard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this crazy Rambo motherfucker who kills and takes pleasure in killing.
Yeah.
And that did it in a much better, subtle way than Full Metal. Anyway, but I love that scene because they highlight that in the scene, and it feels good in the scene because he's fucking this lady, and those words are very, very powerful in that scene.
Yeah.
And also how it relates to the whole movie and just in general. Great. Love it. I like a lot of the riverboat scenes where, like,
they're just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, they pull over the boat. He's hiding a puppy, man.
Oh, yeah.
The natives, like, just get the fuck out of here. Like, they're just trying to scare us away, and they just gun them all down.
Yep.
This movie has a lot of spectacle where you say, oh shit, I didn't think I was going to see that.
Yeah.
Or, oh shit, I'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was definitely a spectacle-based movie.
Oh, totally. Totally.
And when you add in the fact that it was one of the latest deliveries for the clients that financed it, it makes it even more interesting. I think it spent like a year.
What do you mean by that?
It spent almost a year and a half in post-production because production troubles, landed them in such hot water. There's a fascinating documentary about it called Hearts of Darkness. It's about how, like, Francis Ford Coppola almost went fucking insane trying to just finish the movie. And there's interviews with him in it where he's, like, literally rambling like a madman about how he has to get it done, but it's not working out for him. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, you did mention that I should have watched that, but as you know, I really don't like this movie, and I was like, I do not want to watch more content about this movie.
Yeah.
I could see it being interesting. The more I sit on this movie, the more like fucking pie in the sky in the back of my head kind of way I can appreciate the movie and kind of like
you can appreciate it without liking it kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do dislike this movie. I love the scene with Robert Duvall.
Oh my god. Every scene he's in is my favorite scene in this movie.
He was like the Arlie Ermy of this movie, where like,
oh man,
not quite as amazing,
yeah,
but he did such a good job. And like, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. What a great line!
Yeah,
the whole riding over the canopy of Vietnam with the Flight of the Valkyries playing in the background.
Oh man,
how fucking gorgeous!
I use like, Wagner because it scares the slopes.
Yeah, like it's great. That's become like a trope without being a trope.
Yeah,
because people can't recreate that moment, but it's known by everyone.
Yeah.
Before I even saw this movie, I knew what that was.
Yeah.
So, oh, here we go. That's where it's from. But without ever even thinking I actually seen it in anything. But I always got the reference.
I think my favorite part with Robert Duvall is when he goes to this guy who's this Viet Cong who's dying on the street, and he goes, any man who's brave enough to fight with his guts hanging out can have a drink out of my canteen. And he puts the canteen down to the guy's mouth. And then the guy goes, sir, I think such and such, the surfer's here.
The famous
surfer. And he
surfer.
goes, the surfer? And then he just like stands up, never gives the guy the canteen, dumps it all out.
The water splashes everywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man. That was so fucking hilarious.
Yeah. There's a bit of like a cartoony moment when he like splashes all the water away. But I really do like that scene a lot too.
Oh, yeah.
I think that could have been its own really funny movie too.
Yeah.
Where I'm going with that is there are so many really good scenes I think they could have spent a little bit more time with, but this movie feels long. This movie feels very fucking long.
Well, you know the original cut of it was 5 hours and 15 minutes, right?
Get the fuck out of here with that.
Yep.
Oh my god. This movie already makes me like, when's it over? And I love the Marlon Brando scenes.
Oh, they were so
good. Cut
good.
this down. Trim this. Half the shit in the middle, while interesting and spectacly being like, oh, I didn't think I'd see that, or I've never seen anything like that, or that might have made more sense in the book, but does not really translate well at all to the movie.
Yeah.
Could have been cut. It would have been so much better for it. But yeah, there are some fucking great scenes. I also love the beginning where he's getting his orders. He's having a sit-down dinner with like Harrison Ford and the general, and there's a lot of little quirks and character things that they add to that scene that make it really interesting. Like,
yeah,
Harrison Ford has a cold, but it's interesting in that scene.
Yeah,
they're dining on roast beef, and at the end of the movie, you see them slaughter a living cow.
Yeah,
right. It's like that's such a great image. Side by side, the movie's so long you kind of forget, but in the beginning, you know, they're dining on the roast beef on a fucking silver platter, but in Marlon Brando's camp, they are making that quote unquote roast beef. They have to raise and kill that motherfucking animal.
Yeah,
that's the blood. So I thought that was such a good thing. Because at the very end, he's saying like when Marlon Brando's having his spiel about like, you know, they have no taste for war.
Yeah,
they want to win without winning.
Yep,
or they want to win without fighting. All of his rhetoric is so interesting. But, yeah, there's so much I like, and I really like Martin Sheen's character. I even like the cook to an extent, although he was kind of like a cartoon character. I liked him. I liked the ship driver. I just hate this movie, but I love so much about it.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. Paul, what did you like about this movie?
I liked the parallels to the Heart of Darkness, which I will try and explain in as much detail as possible. The dehumanization of the everyday people of the land in which they are kind of conquering, I guess. Like, they don't see these people as human beings. They killed a lady who was trying to protect her puppy, and guys on the boat were okay with it. Not all of them, but some of them were. I love the decadence of the top brass. Like, they have, you know, roast beef and shrimp, and they have these nice cabinets full of china, even though they're in the middle of a war zone. I love every scene with Robert Duvall, as we mentioned already. I love Martin Sheen's voiceover, and like I said, I usually don't like voiceover that much. This movie to me is an art film, not a war movie.
I'd agree to that.
And the art films can be kind of tough to sit through if you're not in it for the art film parts of it, because to me, the meticulous post-production that they did on this and some of the ways it made certain scenes turn out, like the opening where there's all this smoke and it starts that song and he goes, "This is the end," as the bombs explode across the tree line, and then it has that kind of constant beating sound, as in, these are the helicopter noises, and the beating sound turns into the spinning of a fan, which is, presumably the cause of some of Martin Sheen's anxiety, and Martin Sheen's voiceover just oozes with emotion and regret about his situation, but it oozes with emotion and regret in that way where it's like, obviously he's just given up. It's all over for him. He's just droning through life, waiting for anything exciting to happen because the excitement was in the bush, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Contrast that with Platoon, which seemed like Oscar bait. Like, hey, let's bring all these great actors in to perform for a pretty decent script, and, we'll get an undeserving couple of people in, Charlie Sheen and Kevin Dillon, token Academy Award by virtue of that. All of the spectacle of the USO performance, the journey down the river and the firefights. I love just about everything about this movie because it's one of those movies that takes its time and it's heavy on its themes, but despite that, there is a lot of subtlety in the characters at times and their very simple human wants, like Chef just wants to be back home making sauce. And another thing I really love is I love Dennis Hopper's character, this like acid head weirdo journalist who's kind of in the cult of Kurtz in a way. I thought it was such a well done piece of art. It's not a war movie, it's a piece of art, and it moralizes a lot of things about the war, but it doesn't judge in the way that Platoon says Barnes is patently wrong, Charlie Sheen is patently right. It's just, this is the way it is. The only moment that even gets close to that in Platoon for me is when the black guys are talking about how, oh, well, poor people are always beholden to the rich people. So to me, this is just kind of like an amazing art film that happens to deal with a subject that's really fucked up and combines that fucked up subject with source material that absolutely deserves to be updated for every era. Like, if there was an apocalypse now for the Iraq War, God help me if I am not the first guy in line to go see that. Because between the visuals, the sound motifs of the helicopter beating, the loneliness of Martin Sheen's character, the craziness of Kurtz, it's just a movie to me that is like, it's simple, but because of its simplicity, they can be super artistic about it, and it still works really well.
Can you elaborate more on how this pertains to the book, or where you saw, like, this is obviously taken from the book, or this is just that chapter but just done in Vietnam?
In the book, they're absolutely horrendous to the native Africans. They treat them like savages, and they treat them like they're guerrilla warfare practitioners. They kill them with impunity and then rationalize it afterwards. Kurtz is similarly characterized in the book and the movie. He's just this guy who's gone mad with power and realized that because all these people worship him, he can pretty much act with complete impunity. That's
from the book.
Yeah. But it's also in the movie as well. the complete and total...
But that makes more sense now.
Yeah.
Because it's in the book.
The complete and total nihilism of being like, well, this government that I don't necessarily respect, but that provided me with the only exciting experience in my life, wants me to do something, and so I better do it whether or not I agree with it or not type thing from Martin Sheen's character is very much from the book, because in the book, the character of Martin Sheen in the movie is not sympathetic to the natives, but he's like, we're trading one form of oppression of the natives, which is killing them, for another form, which is essentially enslaving them by a madman. And that's not necessarily clear in the movie, but in the book, that kind of, if I recall correctly, ends up being part of the impetus for him to actually go through with the Kurtz killing.
Now might be as good a time as ever. Since we're on the topic of the Heart of Darkness book, can I bring up a few scenes, and could you maybe tell me if that's from the book? Because I think in the movie,
if I remember
what
it, yeah,
the fuck?
Of course.
Okay, the Miss America or the USO girls.
There's no equivalent.
Crash,
There's no equivalent there.
And then that weird there is nobody in charge thing. That was just on his own.
Yeah, I don't remember that being
that
in the book at all.
What about the French people scene?
I do remember in the book he visits like some richer other colonizers type thing, or like people who like did whatever the equivalent of like homesteading is.
Okay.
But I don't remember what sort of conversations they had or anything like that, so I'm not sure about that one either. What
about the surfer character?
No, I think that was just kind of a way of making it modern and like reminding us, hey, the people fighting in the Vietnam War were fucking kids.
Ugh. What else? There's a few other scenes that bothered me. Because I was like, this has to be in the book because this just does not make sense visually or to the story. Like, it just feels so out of place. I had thought that perhaps, if I read the book, this might have made sense because this is like a weird interpretation of something. Even when I say I've read the book,
it was, 8 years ago.
Right.
So,
but also now that I'm asking you, you're saying a lot of this was a lot of weird, bizarre creative liberty.
Yeah, I would say so.
God damn it. That makes me...
Because it takes place in a completely different time.
Well, not only that, but like I said, the Miss America thing, which is weird, and the body comes out of like the chest they have like at the bed. Or, they have like all the bodies. They're fucking on top of bodies, right? I was like, is this in the book? Because that just felt alien. Remember how I told you that this movie makes me feel like I'm on a fucking drug trip, and it's just like, it bothers me and I hate it, and it's just way too long?
Man, you have to watch Hearts of Darkness then, because in that movie, I don't know if you've ever hung out with people who do hallucinogenic drugs, which, by the way, I would highly recommend being around people who do them because it's very fun. Dennis Hopper's character, first off, is a perfect example of someone who's on acid.
You don't get it, man.
And second off, if you watch Hearts of Darkness, there are points in which it feels like Francis Ford Coppola has just been taking acid the entire production long.
But I don't like that.
I don't care if you like it. I'm just saying that's a thing that might have influenced the way that it artistically came out.
I totally acknowledge that, but I fucking hated that. It bothered me in its length, in its sound. Sometimes the visuals were like okay, but the message was weird. It was like totally without direction. That's, like I said, it's more art housey or art filmy.
Yeah.
That because of those elements.
Sure.
And it's like the direction just gets totally lost in like the... And I was hoping that maybe this was from the book. That's why I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. But apparently a lot of the issues that I had in this movie were on his own acid taken.
And that's conjecture. I don't know that he was on drugs. But it just, if you listen to him talk and you spend a lot of time with people doing acid, which I have, it's very much like, oh, this guy is like someone who can take acid and still act on his ambition type thing. Whereas like for most people, acid just removes your personality and you become this kind of nothing blank slate.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you seen The Godfather and The Godfather 2?
Yes.
You like those movies, I'm assuming? They're pretty...
Sure do.
Pretty unarguably great.
I love...
That's why I give this
Godfather
movie the benefit of the doubt, is because, like, you don't produce a movie like The Godfather or The Godfather Part 2 without being very thoughtful about your movies. And to me, I want to give a director the benefit of the doubt if they have done work of the quality of The Godfather 2 and The Godfather 1, because of the fact that obviously that means they have the time and resources to dedicate themselves to things like that.
Yeah, directors can make fucked up movies too, though.
Well, yeah, obviously he made The Godfather 3, which was, awful.
Fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. But I don't know. Something about the combination of Godfather 1, Godfather 2, and Apocalypse Now, I'm like, man, this guy had some serious, balls and vision, honestly. But I mean, I totally understand if it didn't work for you because, it can feel a little bit rambling at times.
Yeah, and I totally respect that as, like, this is an art movie for art house people. Not even art house, just art, like, art film people. But, my God, the place this movie holds in so many people's hearts as, like, that movie or a must-see movie is just so bizarre to me. I'm not fighting its reputation because I genuinely dislike this movie, but it baffles me how critically acclaimed this movie is by just like how differently I have my opinion on it. I just, some people love this movie. I fucking hate this movie.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Well, in a surprise twist of fate, though we have briefly touched on our normal topics with regard to Apocalypse Now and Platoon, for once in our podcasting career, I have to go as a result of a dinner that came up. It's a Father's Day dinner that I'm supposed to be helping cook. So for now, I think we should maybe revisit this, do a little miniature podcast where we talk just a little bit about what we haven't gotten a chance to mention about Apocalypse Now.
Or maybe we could just tack it on at the end of this. Like, we'll just try to
exactly.
take
but
it back
for now,
from where we were.
I think I need to go help with that. And
by all means.
For now, until we're able to do this next podcast, which could be any time in the next week or so, would you recommend this movie to anyone?
Nope. Stay very fucking far away from this.
I would recommend this to all of my film school friends and probably no one else. So,
all right, Paul. I look forward to revisiting this movie. Sorry for cutting you off, but enjoy your dinner.
Dude, I thought that I told my family I'd be done at 6:15, and they said I would be done at 5:45, which I think maybe they just misheard me. So,
maybe they just want to eat now.
Yeah, maybe they do. So I will go get the vegetables and rice all set up, and
cool.
We will talk about this again very, very soon.
All right. I have been Anson Chan.
And I've been Paul Morgan, and we will be back next time with more Apocalypse Now.
Enjoy your rice and vegetables, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.